Hello and welcome to the Crossroads podcast. On this podcast, we explore the relationship between different cultures, generations, and ideologies to better understand how we can grow as a person and live happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives. I'm Joshua Hahn, your host, and I created this platform to invite people with interesting perspectives on life to come share their stories. For our first episode, I invited my friend, Chang, to discuss his immigrant experience and share what it's like adjusting to life in a new country. John is a Korean British in his mid-20s who recently immigrated to San Francisco to pursue a career in tech and crypto. Welcome, John. How's it going?
Yeah, things are going well, Josh. Had a very good Korean dinner with you. Yeah, couldn't be better. I know.
Great. I'm excited to get started. So before we discuss anything else, I'd love to know how your story started. Did it start in Korea or were you born in the UK?
It's a very good question. Believe it or not, my story started in Korea. I was born in Seoul, and then I went to the UK when I was about 2, and that was due to my father working there. Um, so we all migrated to the UK when I was 2. Been there for over 27 years, and yeah, here I am.
Wow. What prompted your family to move over?
Mainly for my dad's sort of job. He's like a interpreter, translator. So he's bilingual in English and Korean. So I guess,
Mm.
yeah, that was sort of the deciding factor for that.
Mm. So, 2-year-old John, with both parents, moved to the UK. Did you have any siblings growing up?
Yeah, I have an older sister. She's a year older. She's a pharmacist right now. And yeah, it's been interesting. I've grown up with the older sister. But yeah, how about yourself? Did you have any siblings or?
No, I'm actually an only child. I also immigrated out of Korea. I was roughly 3.5 when I immigrated to California.
Okay, wow. It's talking to two very local people who have been in the UK and the US. Interesting stories.
So, I don't know much about the UK, to be honest. Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up there. Did you move into a suburb? Did you have friends and perhaps extended family already living there?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think, when I was first there, I think I grew up in a town called New Malden. So that is considered Koreatown in the UK. Back then, when I was like very young, there wasn't such a big community back then, especially the Korean community. It was very small, so everyone sort of knew each other back then. And yeah, I guess growing up, I think was kind of tough. Like I think growing up as an Asian kid, there was a lot of racism involved. People really, couldn't really tell the difference between Korea and all the other Asian countries. So it was definitely been struggles growing up. But I think it's not just me that went through that. I'm sure you went through that as well, and what it was like. And I'm sure there was a lot of similarities between growing up as a Korean in the UK versus the US. Would you agree?
Hmm. I would agree. Growing up, going through the whole public education system in the United States, there weren't too many other Asian kids growing up. The few there were, we were obviously treated like minorities. There's this whole stereotype of like Asian kid brings lunch. Brings lunch to school, homemade, right? Mom put a lot of love into it, but it's smelly. There's kimchi or like anchovies.
Tell me about it.
Or radishes. God forbid.
Yeah.
When you're young, kids don't know better. They haven't had much exposure to other cultures, right? What they don't know, there's either fascination or just straight up rejection. And I think a lot of those times it was rejection, right? With like, oh, it smells so weird, that's gross, or just ching chong, racist things like that going on. And it never felt malicious. just more like they just don't know better. But I think at that young age, it wasn't too bad until I got a little bit older.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I agree 100%. Nowadays it's almost like it's gotten drastically better, to be honest.
Yeah, now in our 20s,
Yeah,
out there in the working world,
fully agreed. Yeah.
could you elaborate on what kind of friends you had growing up? You said you grew up in basically what was Koreatown in the UK, in London. Was it a lot of immigrant families, or is there a healthy population of second or even like third generation Koreans?
Yeah, I think mostly, if they were back then, like mostly first gen, like myself. Over the years though, a lot more Koreans started to to move there, and it wasn't just Koreans. There was a lot of other Asian cultures, and I think it was because of you had a lot of Korean restaurants that are very good, Korean supermarkets, and that sort of attracted a lot of like other Asian, people, into the area. So that was one thing, and I guess over time, it felt a lot more comfortable just
Hmm.
living as a Korean, I guess. Definitely, a lot of the K-pop and K-dramas that probably helps, obviously, but I think also our economy, how well South Korea have come, how far they've come in terms of GDP and essential economics. They've done very well. So yeah.
Totally. Would you say you have a lot of non-Asian friends?
I think when I was younger, my Korean wasn't the best, so I think, I tended to feel like I was more like maybe westernized or British back then. So I probably had less Asian friends than I did than right now. I think what really changed was when I went to university. That's when I started to meet people from different cultures, from different
Yeah.
countries. And I didn't experience that when I was younger, but then when I come to university, there's people from everywhere, like countries that I've never even heard of, like Nepal. I didn't know where Nepal was until I met my first Nepalese friend,
Wow.
who I'm very close with. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of Filipino friends or Vietnamese friends when I was younger,
Mm.
but I made a lot during university. So that really changed my perspective of other Asian countries, and yeah, I really got to make a lot of friends.
Mm.
How about yourself? Did you have any sort of exposure to that? Or?
Yeah, that's interesting now that I think about it, because I think when I first immigrated to, I guess, like the first few years of my childhood up until middle school, I had a very diverse group of friends. I had a lot of Caucasian friends. I had Black, Hispanic, like all sorts of friends. I got along just fine on the playground. I would play all sorts of games with them and like felt like I belonged. But I think it was middle school and onwards, up until college maybe, where it was this weird U curve where the diversity started off strong, it shrunk, and then it flourished again. And I think that narrowing down of my friend group from a diverse crowd to like a more like just other Korean friends happened as, I guess maybe it's like a puberty thing where I don't know, honestly. But I think that's when like people start to think about like, oh, who do I belong with? What kind of people do I have more things in common with? What is it like back at home? How am I being treated? What are expectations of me? And what is my future going to look like? As a child, your parents like start putting these ideas in your head. Right? Like, oh, you should study for this, you should try that, you should go to this school. And I think those like adolescent years is when those things really start marinating in your head.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
So I actually kind of want to backtrack a little bit, and you mentioned that you hung out with mostly Korean people growing up until uni. And I was wondering, what was it like growing up at home? Were your parents very westernized? Did they raise you in a very conservative, traditional Korean household?
Yeah. They were very Korean, to say the least. They like just with any other Korean parents, I'd imagine they were very strict. Wanted good grades. Sometimes, if you miss, especially me, I misbehaved quite a lot back then. So I'd get this, the stick. Get the Korean treatment.
Korean treatment.
The Korean treatment with the wooden spoon. Like I'm sure it's common in many other Asian cultures, but it was very, they want, in hindsight, they wanted what was best for me and my sister. And I'm sure you went through the same as well, or could be wrong, but that was my sort of experience. Obviously, that sort of ended as I got a lot older. But yeah, curious to know about yourself.
Yeah, I would say up until I went into college, my parents they seemed very traditional and conservative to me. Like you said, a lot of high expectations. As an immigrant, I just felt a lot of pressure to perform, to not make my parents' sacrifice be in vain. And that's kind of an awful lot to deal with as a child. In my case, I'm an only child. I have no other cousins here in the US. I'm the eldest grandchild on both sides. And I just felt this immense pressure to, hey, like, all of our hopes are riding on you. You're the first one here. You got to make us proud.
Damn.
Yeah. And I would say, like, that dynamic has definitely changed for the better. It is a lot better now. But that's how I felt growing up.
It's a lot of pressure, man. Yeah, I can't really imagine as much, handling that much pressure as you. I was not the best kid, I'll be honest. I was the mischievous type, I guess. I did grow up that when I was in university. I sort of saw that I needed to make a change. During those years, especially after I graduated. I was like, fun, game's over now. You actually have to start making money, and somehow, how are you going to do that? So that's sort of how I figured out things myself, really.
I actually want to know more about what the college experience was like for you growing up in the UK. So you went through the whole public education system in the UK, right? They call it, what, primary, secondary?
That's
school?
the one, yeah.
What do they call high school?
Secondary school. Yeah.
Oh, that's secondary school?
That's
okay.
the one.
I thought that was middle school, my bad. So you went into college in the UK. That's where you experienced a lot of like newer, diverse groups of friends, opened up your perspective to things. So what did you study, and how did the social dynamic change in college?
Yeah, interesting question. I study music, sort of the business side of music management. Very unrelated to what I do now, but that is what I studied back then. College, or we call it university, it was very different from what I was used to. I think, in university, you have people, like I said, people from everywhere, from every country you can imagine. Well, just from different countries. So you're exposed to different cultures. And naturally, when you first go to university, you want to have fun. So I think everyone was especially first year, everyone was in the sort of the mindset to party, meet your friends, drink. So I went to a lot of like house parties, and we'd go clubbing. And that's how generally I'd meet new people. And actually, one of the good ways was attending these sort of events. So universities, they'll have like these social events.
Right.
Like these groups, so there'll be like, there's like, football society, Oriental society. So whatever interested you, you could go.
They call it societies.
We call it societies.
That sounds so much classier. Than
What'd you call it?
We just call them student organizations, or but society sounds so much better.
See, I mean, you know what? Like, I think, although it was a lot of fun, I don't think it was like, from what I've seen, from what I've heard of in American, sort of culture, them frat parties, there's probably nothing like that where you have like, hundreds of people in-house. Maybe you can sort of elaborate on that.
Yeah, that's... Yeah, I think it would be interesting to draw a comparison between, I guess, uni in the UK and college in the US, right? I would say here in the United States, a lot of people leave home for college, right? They move out of state or they try to get away from their families. It's actually kind of expected, I would say, if you're going to a 4-year university. And for many people, this is the first time you've had all this freedom. And it's a crazy 4 years of rediscovering your identity, making new friends, trying new experiences, making mistakes.
For sure.
And I think it was such a transformative time of my life. I went from an introvert coming out of high school into an extrovert. I definitely opened up my perspective to a lot of things. I think I learned how to empathize with a lot of people, connect with people from all kinds of cultural backgrounds. And I think that's something very valuable that I've taken away from college.
Oh wow. Yeah, I have to agree on the fact that I was very sort of introverted back then before I joined university. But I think what university or college teaches you is it kind of pushes you out your comfort zone. When you meet new people, you're sort of forced to socialize. Have interesting things to talk about. Don't be awkward. Those sort of things. So I definitely learned a lot of my skills sort of back from there.
Yeah. I think it's the first time in your life for most people where you can curate your own social experiences. Because before then, you're kind of stuck in your hometown. You're meeting people through your family or just people in your neighborhood. And now you have this whole world open to you. So that's very interesting. Remind me what you're doing now.
So I'm a software engineer now.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. So you went from studying business in music to software. How did that happen?
Yeah, good question. So in my final year of university, I stumbled across blockchain technology, and I saw how that could sort of revolutionize payments within the music industry. So from then, I sort of took the initiative to really, look into how it was done. Found out, it was done through coding. And yeah, I got interested, started off self-taught, took a course in the UK, and then, yeah, sort of right after university, did all of that, and then landed my first gig at some fintech company, and then that's how I sort of, started off my career. So.
That's pretty cool. So you said you were looking at something where a blockchain technology that would help payments in music. So there was some kind of intermediary connection where it went from music to software. It wasn't just some random whim that came into your head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That initially got me interested, and then, yeah, I sort of started to, look at how things were done in the space. I had a friend who was a programmer, so I could ask him a few questions here and there.
Right.
So that helps, I guess. Yeah.
So how did this newfound interest in engineering, in technology, go from an interest into an actual career?
Yeah. So I started off teaching myself at the beginning, and then I took this sort of course in the UK, which was about 3 months long. And shortly after that, I was able to sort of reach out to recruiters and then land my first gig by getting through the first stage of the interview and second stage, and then there I was. So
got it. So was that some kind of boot camp program you took?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So how long have you been doing software engineering for?
Started in 2017, so been 6 years. Yeah, over 6 years.
Yeah. And what kind of company did you first work at?
It was a sort of a fintech company, so it was a consultancy for like investment banking. So a lot of like back in engineering, and that sort of things.
Did you have any plans to get out? What prompted your decision to come to the United States?
Yeah, I guess when I was younger, I did have a lot of like thoughts about moving to the States, maybe Silicon Valley. That was sort of maybe a dream that I had maybe one day. I'd work there. And funny enough, last year I was working at Amazon in Prime Video in London, but the opportunity came where they were having sort of opening for a blockchain sort of role within Amazon, and all of the team were based in States. So in order for me to really work in the position, I'd have to relocate to the States, which is how I ended up here.
Oh, wow. So that was the perfect opportunity for you, provided by work, to manifest your dream.
It really was, yeah. And I was I had another offer as well. I had a couple of offers at the time, but to me, I thought, what would be more interesting and excite me more, and that was really just having a new flavor, trying new things in life.
Mm-hmm. Was the other offer in a different country or also in the UK?
It was also in the UK. They were gonna pay me like American salary whilst I was in the UK.
Oh, that's a lot. Okay.
Exactly. So it would have been, I could have lived comfortably, but for me, I thought the experience was what mattered.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you made your decision to come to the US. The months or however long it took leading up to that, finally moving out. What kind of emotions were going through your head? Was it fear, excitement, anxiety, or tell me about that?
Yeah. For me, I'll be honest. Like, I like to take risks, and for me, like, if I see something that interests me, or if I think it's worth pursuing, I'll just take it. I'll give it my all. For me, I didn't really feel much anxiety. It was more excitement, to be honest. I thought, I would always be thinking every night, what it would be like to live in the States rather than UK. See how it'd be different, what type of people I meet, what kind of experiences, what kind of culture, and how is it different from the UK, and all these sorts of thoughts were in my mind, and yeah, it was all just excitement to me. So.
So before you actually left the UK, what did you think life was going to be like here in the States?
Yeah, I thought, when I first came here, I thought I was going to be in a town where everything was very modern, clean.
Clean, okay.
Yeah, you think, you have like the richest people in the world and, smartest people here. They'd invest some sort of money into keeping the streets clean. But
what a concept.
Yeah. that was definitely the opposite. And yeah, I thought, maybe Americans, or maybe I think the culture in the States, people are a lot more talkative. People like to socialize more. In the UK, if you get on the tube, no one really talks to each other, right?
Right.
And that's considered normal. Like, if you do speak to someone, that's considered weird. So
I feel like that's anywhere else in the world, but besides the US.
Exactly. So I did experience people just, talking to random people, shouting across, people, like shouting in the stores, on the bus.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say San Francisco is definitely a more friendly city. So when did you actually come to the United States?
You came here last year, May, so late May 2022.
Late May 2020. It's been almost a year now. Is it everything you expected, or better or worse?
Yeah, that's often the question I ask myself. I think making a big move like that, you often have to sit back and really think about, these sort of questions. Was it worth the move? And for me, I've really enjoyed being here. I've really enjoyed experiencing a different culture. Meeting new people. That was one thing I really wanted to do. Yeah, and also, like, I'm a bit of a techie, quite a big techie. So that was one of the reasons why I came to San Francisco, was to sort of meet people in this sort of space where, they were passionate about, what they were doing and that sort of things.
Right.
And I definitely did meet those type of people here, and I got to make good friends with a few of them, and that's what's kept me here, to be honest. And also the people here, like the people here are super friendly, super nice. People like yourself and others, have considered, to even me being a friend, right? That's really. That means I think that means the world to people who come from a different place, who don't. I didn't know anyone here, right? So,
Yeah.
for me to
Yeah.
just come here alone is, a lot of people would have not been okay with it. But for me, I like the challenge.
Hmm.
And I knew that, if I had to come here, I'd have to force myself really
Right.
to meet new people, talk, learn how to socialize even better than I did back then. So I'm really glad that I moved here.
So earlier you mentioned that meeting new friends here that kept you here. When you said that, I couldn't help but think, did you have plans to go back anytime soon or move to a different city or country?
I mean, yeah, it's I had four options really to. I had a few options before I moved to the States. Right, I had an option to move to New York, Seattle, LA, or here. Um, and originally I planned to move to New York. I thought, I've been there for a week before, for a bit of a holiday, and I really enjoyed it. I think the people there are amazing. There were so many things to do, you know, things close late. There's always people out and about. It's a city. It reminded me of London, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot bigger and a lot more things to do. But I specifically chose here because I think living we're going on a holiday and living are two separate things, right? And I think living in New York would have been very tricky. You have the extreme weather there. The crime is quite high, um, and I wasn't really used to that sort of weather as well. And I don't think I would be able to survive in that sort of cold or that extreme heat. And then I heard San Francisco, the weather was pretty good all year round. So that initially attracted me. Get away from the rain in the UK as it rains a lot. But also, you know, originally, like I felt like San Francisco, there'd be good. The people here would be very interested in what they were doing. I think they were very interesting people. I felt like, I've heard a lot about people from California, especially San Francisco. They have a lot of hobbies. Albeit a lot of them do work in tech, but that was okay with me because I came from London where there wasn't a lot of people, well, especially in my sort of circle. Not a lot of people worked in tech,
Right.
and what I was doing in sort of like blockchain, I was very I really wanted to meet more people in the sort of space,
Yeah,
and I didn't feel like I could get that in London if I stayed there.
I see. How would you describe your social circle now? Your new group of friends?
Yeah, I'd say it's a bit of a mix, right? Right now I have friends like you who don't really work in tech, or don't have don't work in crypto Web3, this sort of crazy space that only crazy people work in, which is great. I feel like when I have people like you, I could just sort of shut my mind off in that sort of area and talk about things that are interesting in life, what I want to do,
Right.
what I want to do when I grow older, when I'm going to have kids, and that sort of things. So I definitely value that relationship, those type of relationships myself. And I have met a lot of like a few people here as well who are in this sort of tech space that I'm in. I do have a lot of regular chats with them, see how they're doing. And then I'm also like a Christian, so I do go to church and I have a good I feel like there's a lot of a strong sort of bonding, like friendship in church that I have shared with people there. Um, so that's sort of the main sort of group I have. Yeah.
That's great. It sounds like you've found some kind of community through your church. You have random kind of one-off friends like myself, like here and there, that are doing their own thing and aren't part of your like professional network. During your time here, have you picked up any new hobbies?
Um, I did when I first came here. I was like, I really want to pick up a new hobby,
Yeah,
and
just to get away from work.
yeah, and also just try something new whilst I'm in the States. I did want to pick up golf, so I know we went golfing a few times.
Yep.
And I really did enjoy that. And you're a very good golfer, by the way, professional. It'll take me years to get to where you are.
This flattery is
Yeah.
just too much for me.
Honestly, it would take me years, but yeah. So that's one thing I want to sort of start picking up on. I think during like the recently with the economy and the layoffs and the sort of macro sort of environment,
Yeah.
that sort of slowed things down for me in terms of what I want to do in terms of hobbies. I think I really, because Amazon, they were one of the one of the companies that had these mass layoffs, as well as Facebook and
Right.
Google. So I think when you're in that sort of mindset, you really, yeah, there's a lot of worry, right? And you start to
Yeah.
worry about work and what can I do to prevent that, from getting laid off, and that eventually leads to just more working more, right? So when that was a sort of a few months period last year, and some of this year, really, I had to sort of deal with it myself. And
Mm.
it's not just me, a lot of people I know went through this.
That must be a lot. A U.S. citizen living and working here, being laid off. That's tough too. But for someone who stepped foot on this country less than a year ago, and I'm assuming your ability to live here depends on being employed by Amazon, right? That must cause a lot of anxiety at this time.
I can't really remember the last time I felt like that, but I really had to really think about, if that worst case scenario, if that happens, what would I do, right? And
Yeah.
even though I didn't want to think about it, I'm the type of person who sort of prepares for
Mm-hmm.
the worst. But yeah, luckily it didn't happen, so here I am.
No, that's great. How are you dealing with that anxiety on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, for me, someone like myself, I think I adapt to things sort of within time. Uh, Not fast, but I get over things. I think when you start to worry about things in the beginning, you are very worried because everything's new to you. So
Mm-hmm.
all this information, you're like, okay, what do I do? Like, if this happens, then I have this and this options. But
Right.
after time, you just think about the same thing, and then it starts to bother you less, and you just accept. You just have to accept that whatever happens. But just be optimistic and you know live your life as if you were gonna, live your life live your life as if you just had you know if it was your last few days here. That's what I had in mind, really, and just don't think about the negatives. So that's how I sort of dealt with the impact, really.
That's an awesome attitude to have towards something like this. Aside from these potential negative things that could happen, what are some things on your mind right now? What are some next things you're considering, both in your, I guess, professional or social life?
Yeah. Social life. When I first came here, I actually went to a ton of events. That was sort of when there was a bit of a bull market, to say, but there were events like every other day, and I would
Right.
attend them all, and
Right.
I was going out like a lot.
And this is
Yeah.
like coming out of COVID, before like all the whole layoffs and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone started to come out back then, and
Right.
there were lots of events being hosted as well, so you
Okay.
could go out and have free drinks, meet new people, and that's where I met a lot of people, really. For me, I'd say that has died down a lot due to what's been going on around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, maybe I'd like to start meeting new people, I guess, in terms of my interests, and start. Maybe one of the good things as well is start to pick up a hobby again. So maybe pick up golf, perhaps tennis. I used to play tennis when I was younger, but stopped playing before university, and then never really picked it up again. But I have a friend, Key. He plays tennis he plays quite regularly, and now that he lives close by in Soma, yeah,
Right.
it might be good to sort of play with him on the weekend. As
Totally.
such. So that's social in my life. Yeah, I think that's one thing. One thing as well is, yeah, I definitely do want to travel more. That's one thing on my bucket list that I've been meaning to do in the States.
Mhm.
Not just travel like globally, but like other places in the States that I haven't been
Right.
before.
Right.
Just like Hawaii, Florida, New York. There's lots of different places. LA. You know.
Aside from that, what about any professional interests? Do you have any big next steps? Any ideas for the future?
Yeah. Another good question. That's something like I've been thinking about for a long time. I'm in my late 20s, coming up to my 30s, unfortunately.
Still young.
Yeah. So I tell myself that, yes. In terms of next steps, I've been exploring other options, like, other things other things that interest me regarding the field that I work in, right? I see myself working there for a few more years at least. But I think I've had other interests in terms of crypto and blockchain, where I've been given a chance to really meet people who share the same interests, um, and they are working on some other things that I'm interested in. I'm also helping one like a startup sort of with the coding and in terms of technology, giving
Right.
them guidance. And I think one day is to really, it could be to start my own thing, or it could be to join someone else's, right? But I think for me, what's important is to really pursue something that I'm really passionate about. Like I really feel like it will change the world and give me the energy to wake up every day and tackle the tasks. So that's sort of my background, well, my story and how I feel. But how about yourself? Yeah, what plans do you have in the future?
Hmm. Well, I'm kind of in an unusual place in my life right now. I was affected by the mass layoffs recently.
Oh, okay.
I'm in my mid-20s, and I think I'm also very fortunate to use this time to reflect on what I would like to do next.
Mm.
Some interests of mine right now are in the climate space, focused on climate problems and corresponding solutions. I am preparing for grad school applications while I'm keeping an eye out for interesting new job opportunities.
Mm.
I think I've started to realize there's so much that I don't know
Mm.
more than I know the older I get. I would really love to turn some of these interests I have into passions, dive deep, become really knowledgeable about it, and make that into my professional career, right? Aside from that, I think the most important thing I'm working on right now is just having a healthier relationship with myself.
Mm. Okay.
I think over the past few years, I've just been so hard on myself.
Mm.
Even when no one else is pressuring me. It's really funny because nowadays my parents are telling me to slow down. Just chill, relax,
Okay.
things are going to be okay. I guess just growing up in that kind of environment, even though I don't have that pressure anymore, I've put that pressure upon myself. And I hold myself to, frankly, some ridiculous expectations that I need to manage better. There's so much in my life I have to be grateful for at the moment. And I could really use a lot of work in rewiring my attitude towards my happiness and being thankful and understanding that things are going to work out in the end. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Wow, that's very. I'm impressed. At this young age, you're having all these deep thoughts that even for me, like I should be thinking about somewhat. But yeah, all the best. And you mentioned you wanted to do was an MBA. That,
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about for a while. I think I've had an entrepreneurial start to my career. I was in product management for a little bit, and I'm kind of at a point where I could explore new roles. I could explore new industries, and there's multiple pivots I could do. And I think an MBA would be the perfect place, opportunity for me to discover that, find a good network of people, and just really dive deep into something going out of it.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely learned a lot, regardless. So yeah, I'd recommend that, I guess, if it's something that you want to do.
Totally. Even this podcast we're doing right now, it's a way for me to explore these
Mm.
different interests I have and just learn from people like yourself, I guess, on like different perspectives on life. So, thank you so much for coming on to this podcast and agreeing to do this for our first episode.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what you do next. So, good luck and thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Pleasure to have you on. Well, have me on, Josh.
That wraps up our first episode. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started and we'd love any feedback or suggestions for future episodes. Thanks for listening.